Committee on Public Safety, Infrastructure, and Maritime Transportation calls this public hearing to order. It is now exactly 2 p.m. on Monday, February 24th, 2014. Present with me today is, to my right, Senator San Nicolas, and to his right is Senator Frank Biagan, and to my left is Senator Eileen Yamashita. Did I miss anybody? The purpose of this public hearing is to receive testimony on the executive appointment of Ms. Rowena F. Perez to serve as a commissioner to the Guam Public Utilities Commission, and to receive testimony on Bill 267-32 COR introduced by Senator San Nicolas. It's an act to strengthen the provisions for the repair or demolition of unsafe structures in Guam's building law by amending Section 66-501, 503, 504, 505, 507, and 508 of Article 5, and Section 66-701 of Article 7 on Chapter 66, Title 21, Guam Code Annotated. Notice of this public hearing was provided to senators, stakeholders, and the local media on February 17th, 2014. That's a 5-day notice, and February 20th, 2014, which is the 48-hour notice, thus meeting the requirements of the open government law. This public hearing is also being broadcast on local television, MCB Channel 117 and GTA Channel 21. The committee will continue to receive written testimony until 5 p.m. on Monday, March 3rd, 2014. Please address testimonies to Senator Thomas Sieta, Chairperson, Committee on Public Safety, Infrastructure, and Maritime Transportation. So, first item on our agenda then will be the confirmation hearing on Ms. Rowena Perez. And I'm going to go ahead and start off with those who have signed up to speak, provide testimony regarding the appointment. And signing up is Attorney Fred Horecki from the Public Utilities Commission. And then after that, I will call up Ms. Perez. So I'll call you up when he's finished. I want to also recognize that with us today is Mr. Andrew Niven, another commissioner from the Public Utilities Commission. Okay, all right. Okay, all right, great. All right, so, Fred.
Thank you, Chairman Ada, Senators Yamashita, San Nicolas, and Uggan. It's my pleasure to be here today to testify in favor of the confirmation of Rowena Perez. And I should say I've had the pleasure to work with Rowena for 6 years at the Commission, and this would be her third term, if she's reappointed, her third 6-year term on the Commission. So she's a very experienced commissioner. She knows the functions and procedures of the Commission, and she's done really an excellent job in the last terms that she's been with the Commission. I've outlined some of her activities in the testimony that I've presented. She has sat in the community at large position. So on our commission, there are different positions, or representatives of business community, community at large, an accountant, some specialty area members. Ms. Perez has really always demonstrated, I think, what's crucial about the PUC. It's the tension between the need to provide adequate rates to the utilities, but at the same time protecting the interests of the ratepayers of Guam. And she, perhaps as much of any of the commissioners, has always been very sensitive to that. She might follow the adage of trust but verify, and always with regard to rate increases for the utilities. She asks insightful questions. She attempts to make sure that whatever increases are approved by the Commission, that they are proven up, that the burden of proof of the utilities has been maintained. And at the same time, she's indicated a strong awareness of the impact of rate increases in our community upon the citizens of Guam, to make sure that rates are only increased when absolutely necessary. In particular, she's taken on a couple of interests that I think are really important. One is the training and well-being of the utility employees. In the past few years, there's been something of a tendency by the utilities to hire consultants to undertake a lot of functions. But Ms. Perez has always insisted that if the utilities are hiring consultants, they must take steps to ensure training for our utility employees. So the idea is, if the utility hires the consultant should be working itself out of a job by passing on those particular the knowledge and functions to employees of the utility. And she has, as I also pointed out in the testimony, in a number of proceedings required in our orders, that we have specific provisions which require GPA and GWA to report to the PUC and tell us exactly what they're doing about the training for the employees, the specific plans that are in place, and what the improvement plans are for the future. So I think she needs to be commended for taking that particular role on. Overall, she's been a committed, devoted commissioner. She's added a lot to our meetings. She's been punctual in attending the meetings. And really, I think of the commissioner, she always asks the hard, insightful questions. And sometimes the utilities aren't comfortable with those. But when you're looking at rates and whether to increase rates, she asks the kind of questions that need to be asked. So in closing, I think she's been an excellent commissioner. I really advocate or suggest that you continue her service on the commission and reappoint her as a commissioner to the PUC. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any of the members have any questions of Mr. Harecki? Thank you very much for your
Thank you,
testimony.
Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senators.
Ms. Perez? Okay. Third term.
Yeah.
You're either a masochist or
We were discussing that.
okay. But good. I'm happy that the governor has reappointed you. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and let you make your opening statement, and then we'll take it from there.
Mr. Chair and Senators, thank you for this opportunity to address you on the reappointment from the governor's office. There is a lot of thought being put into this. As you said, it's not the easiest appointment, and what goes with it is very challenging. It's sensitive because it affects the community, but there's also my desire and willingness as a citizen, a community member, to ensure that whatever is done with our utilities and the other responsibilities of the PUC is evaluated and reviewed and thought thoroughly through its effects on our community. My goal is I'm willing to continue serving as a PUC, as a commissioner for the community, given I have your support, because our people deserve a good and healthy running utility. Our people deserve to ensure that their interests are being protected. All the ratepayers have that right to be able to come forward and expect from those who are appointed to hold that interest and care in hand. And the balance, trying to find the balance, can be difficult and challenging at times. And it does test the desires to make sure that what is decided on my part as a commissioner is fair to
to go ahead and just ask the first question, then I'll open it up, and we'll just kind of get the discussion started that way. But um, maybe if you can just give me your thoughts about, sometimes there's the perception that the PUC's decisions are really just a rubber stamp. When GPA or GWA comes in to petition for a rate increase, inevitably they would come out with if they go in and ask for a 5% rate increase, they come out with a 5% rate increase. So, can you maybe just kind of talk to that and um, and maybe speak to that perception as to why you think it is or it is not accurate?
It would be, it would seem that way in that when work is being done and decisions are made, recommendations that come from the CCU or other entities about what is needed for their different agencies, it may seem that way, but it isn't quite true. We do our homework, and we also, as a PUC, want to be able to work collaboratively to make sure that the needs of the community are met. There have been times where the PUC did counter what was being requested. We have made those decisions. They request for a certain rate increase, we decrease it. We've had recommendations coming in from even our own council, and we say, well, no, we don't agree with that. So there is that independence that the PUC does practice. So the perception, although it may look that way as if it were rubber stamping, it isn't. There's a lot of work that goes into even reviewing the consultant's reports, what the testimonies are, what the feedback we receive, or any of the reports received. So I would say that it's more a collaborative effort to make sure that business is moving forward and improvements are being met so that our needs are being met.
So maybe what we read in the media related to these increases is really just the tip of the iceberg of the information that's made available
Yes,
to the PUC.
I would say that.
Okay. All right. Senator Nicolas? Senator Machida?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Welcome to your legislature. Thank you again for your willingness to serve, to sacrifice, do, as you said, what is needed for our people. Your accomplishments are indeed notable, and I thank you for being an active member of our community in sharing. So my question is, how do we ensure that everybody has water on our island? How do we tackle that? And I know about ratepayers, I get all of that, but I have a growing concern of many of our families not having water. I'm not even worried about power. I'm just concerned about running water. Who should be looking at that? Who should be addressing it? How do we make progress in that?
We all should be looking at that. Commissioners, the legislature, the governor's administration, and those even running the utilities. What we've done on the PUC side, and just with the recent passing of the funding for the stipulated orders that are taking place now for waterworks to improve the services. I think one of the biggest steps we've made collectively and collaboratively is being able to provide the funds to address that issue. First off, making sure our water stays clean. Secondly, do we have the provisions and the funding to be able to run those pipes, to be able to provide every community member here the usage of water? As we continue to work, understand the dynamics, the infrastructure needs, and to be able to ensure that every need of our community is met, then those are the steps we have to take, and we are taking those steps. We're actively taking those steps in the recent bond issuance to be able to provide that funding that is needed, which has been lacking. And it was not an easy decision to make. All of us are addressed. I believe that community members want to make sure that our water is first and foremost provided to us. So protecting that, protecting the interest, and ensuring that we provide the funding that is needed and the expertise and within the utility, much why I say, well, if we're going to invest this much money in consultants, how much of that knowledge is being passed on to our local community? How much are we keeping? How much knowledge is being shared and given to our local, the local employees, the personnel of the Guam Water Works, to ensure that we continue to protect and provide those services to our people. So I think we're taking the positive steps moving forward. We're going to see good things happening. Impressed with the improvements that I have seen with Waterworks. And as Mr. Harecki had mentioned, I do focus much on that training and workforce development. How do we ensure that Tamaria, Tennessee, gets that water at the end of that pipeline? Well, I want to make sure that the individuals that are responsible for running that utility has the knowledge and the expertise to be able to continue to provide that, not just today, but for tomorrow and the future tomorrows.
Well, Rowena, I really do appreciate that. I think the building of local capacity is also always an essential part of sustainability for any issue or project, and so I appreciate. And then again, in looking at your background, it's real clear to me why you do that. You've advocacy, human development, just all of that is real clear. So what you're doing, I really appreciate, and I'm sure that you ensure that our employees know how to work with the diversity of our population, because we are an enriched group of people, but there are ways to work with different people, right? So thank you for that. But I do look forward to ensuring our greater understanding and heightened success at ensuring that everybody has access to clean water. It's just such a healthy beginning to everything else that we do and stuff. So I look forward to working with you. And again, I thank you very much for your willingness to serve. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you,
Thank
Senator.
you. Senator Ogden?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I too, Ms. Perez, would like to extend a thank you for your willingness to serve a third term in PUC. You know, I listened very intently to the comment of the first question that the chairman extended to you, and I think to some extent that's the perception out there. But the reality is that any time that a rate is being proposed by GPA, obviously it goes through several pre-screening steps. One is discussed by the CCU, then presented to the public in public hearing process, and then hopefully the CCU will come back and reconsider some of his decisions, and the rate based on the concerns of the community, and then ultimately is presented to the PUC for final consideration and sign off. So just understanding how that process works. Sometimes it may appear as if in fact you're just stamping some of the requests. And I say that because there were a few instances where I was pleasantly surprised that rather than giving a 5% rate, a 3.2 was given with some conditions. You have to go back and you have to not only complete this, but for any additional request, that you certainly have to bring this back to the PUC. I guess just a couple of issues or questions that I would like to ask. One is, I noticed that the term is November 1st, 2013 would have commenced, but then the transmitter was not received by the legislature until January of this year. Is there a reason for the lag time? Was there like an oversight where, in fact, they didn't realize that your term had expired?
No, Senator, I was not able to get my application in until January.
Okay.
There were some personal family issues that I was addressing at the time.
Okay.
That was my delay.
And secondly, let me just close with this. I think that as we proceed with the Marines relocation, we already know that about $105 million have been preconditionally approved for infrastructure dealing directly with our utilities. I don't know, I'm not able to, I don't have the immediate information in front of me in terms of what that breakdown is. I believe it's water, wastewater infrastructure, but
Correct.
I may be incorrect. Okay, thank you for correcting me that. So that being the case, the legislature had just provided authorization, and GWA was very successful in going out and acquiring $200 million for the initial phase of upgrading some of the facilities and meeting the federal code requirements and injunctions. Now, we understand that the $105 million may not be releasable until after the record of decision is finally approved. That being the case, I certainly hope that the CCU will be proactive in terms of coming back for reconsideration of the rates that were pre-approved by the legislative body authorizing the borrowing of $450 million. I do also hope that once additional resources are provided towards the other utilities, whether it be Guam Power Authority, that also the PUC would take that into consideration because $105 million for projects that would be above and beyond, that would have an impact as we move forward with the Marines relocation. Obviously, that could provide some reasonable rate relief for our residents right now who are in the system. And we don't expect Uncle Sam to foot the bill, but the reality is that any incremental adjustment as a result of the Marines relocation, certainly we want to request that additional support so that the people of Guam, it's a partnership more or less in terms of continuing to see improvements in the infrastructure. So I just would like to leave you with that note that as we, as a community, continue to get additional funding and resources for the utilities, that the PUC continues to track that and monitor that very closely and ensure that if there's any reconsideration for the previous approved rate structure, that certainly PUC would be at the forefront of revisiting that because any rate relief over the next 5 to 7 years for our residents and for your consumers certainly would be very helpful. So I leave you with that note, but Ms. Perez, thank you very much again for extending yourself to the people of Guam for another several years in terms of assuming your third term. And I certainly look forward to voting on your nomination. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you,
Chair.
Senator.
Thank you. Senator Tonieta? And I want to introduce also for the record the presence of Senator Tonieta and Senator Tina Barnes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you again, Mr. Chair. I just have just a comment, and I'd like to thank you, Ms. Perez, again for, giving yourself to the commission for your service and to the people of Guam. Your work doesn't go unnoticed. There's a lot of challenges that face our island, and the ratepayers, and you guys, I believe that do the best work that you guys can do for the people of Guam, and I thank you for that, and you have my support.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Senator Barnes?
Mr. Chair, and Mr. Chair, I need to disclose for the record that the nominee or for the reappointment I thought it was Ms. Santalan, but I guess Ms. Perez, that she's known me all my life, and we're by blood first cousins, and I want to share for the record that she will have my support 100%. I just recently, on another hat that she wears with the Guam Community College, she was able to step up to the plate to help our men and women who were deployed that came home to a program that will continue to work closely with their livelihoods and train them and educate them for better opportunities. And her wearing that hat, working closely with the educational folks within the Guam Community College, but more importantly with the Army National Guard and the Army Reserve. I just want to say thank you. And then you also wear this hat, stepping up to the plate, working, leaving family, but more importantly, literally taking care of the Tun Jose's and Tan Marias out there, and literally taking the time to listen to a lot of their concerns and making sure that they're not forgotten. Mr. Chair, we've also worked on some water issues and talking about infrastructure that needs to get in so that people who want to build a new house will not be, I guess, bombarded or stuck with a fee that's really not cost effective to those who want to have a better quality of life. And we continue to work on that journey. And I just want to say that Ms. Rowena Perez, has been able to open her doors to our committee and our office, and she's been forthcoming and just very, very sincere in her answers that she shares closely with us as we continue to work for our constituents in the community. So I want to say thank you for your support, and thank you for not giving up. And I know it's not easy. I know it takes a lot of time away from the family, but you got my 100% support. Thank you. Thank you for not leaving. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you very much, Senator Barnes. I have some questions of my own, and I know that when you first started, I think at the time the focus of PUC was really just on the utilities, water and power. But since that time, they've added telecommunications, the port, solid waste, E911. So, given that, has your I guess, area of interest gravitated to a certain activity, such as maybe just strictly more so utilities than, let's say, to the port or to telecommunications? Can you just maybe tell us a little bit about that? Or is it a broad shotgun approach?
I thrive on diversification.
Okay.
So to have to deal with the different types of utilities or telecommunication, the different types of entities that have been assigned to the PUC, it's very interesting, keeps me motivated, and always a new base to learn new information and new knowledge. And I say knowledge is power. It rejuvenates the interest in the PUC because of the different dynamics. And because of the different dynamics, then my challenges, grow, and then my knowledge grows, and my ability to be able to make those hard decisions, are solid. I do. Telecommunications has been an interesting field. A lot of dynamics, a lot of changes that take place in that environment. But the business of the PUC is constant. The business of the PUC is to ensure that we protect the ratepayers. So that is constant in every entity that we deal with. So I do look at all those different issues and find that diversification to be quite interesting for me.
Well, that makes a good segue then into my next question, and that is um, the issue of the PUC. And it appears the PUC is really more in the reactive mode as opposed to being in the proactive mode. So you see the PUC come alive when it receives a petition for a rate increase, as opposed to basically through your own readings or through the information that you receive to basically call in a utility and say what's going on here. And again, I don't know if that's within. At any rate, can you speak to that about being reactive versus being proactive, and that may be my perception that it is really more so in the reactive mode is probably more the truism.
I feel that because of the different entities that have been involved in coming forth to the PUC, I've been on a larger learning curve as to what each of these entities entail for me and my responsibilities. As for proactive, I've taken a proactive state and looking at what are the different resources out there to be able to, particularly with the utilities, with the GPA, like we're looking at the natural gas. I was taking a look at the nuclear. Is there a possibility of nuclear energy sources? And then, of course, we had the incident with Japan. So looking at those different sources. So being proactive, I think because of our learning curve, this has it may be your perception, but that's not staying on top of what's going on. Legal counsel keeps us very well versed in what's happening. There are individuals that do talk to us both in the community and even within the utilities that would share information. So to say that it's all just reactive, I think we get well prepared in order to be able to make those decisions at the table.
My final question is that the mandate of the Public Utilities Commission, as I understand it, is really to ensure that the utility, or at least the entity that comes under the purview of the PUC, that they are able to generate the revenues, the level of revenues that are necessary to support their operations or the projects that they're going to undertake. So if I guess a good example is with the port, they're coming in and they're basically saying, look, we haven't had a rate increase for the past 16 years. We got to dig ourselves out of that big hole that inflation has taken over and be able to also generate revenues to support the capital improvement projects that they want to undertake. How do you, as a matter of personal philosophy, how do you balance the business needs of the utility or the port or that entity that comes under the purview of the PUC and the question of affordability? So, GPA can come in with all these really great projects that needs to be undertaken to make our utilities, first class. But how do you balance that with, the affordability of those services? So can you speak to that?
Very carefully.
Very
carefully, and having to look at the finances, looking at the justification of what it is that any of the utilities may want to address. Speaking of the port, finding out that, with the transshipment rates that are going on, and they lost into their revenue with the transshipment going into the Marshall Islands. I learned that that was a drop in their revenue. And it's also prioritizing what is important within that utility of services to be provided. And every single utility, it's not just the port, it's also the utilities, it's also Guam Water Works. Now we are looking at the port, and we're going to be looking at other entities as well. And how does that become affordable even to our community? It is a balance. It's a challenge to balance that, to make sure that what decisions we are making are providing to allow that utility to become healthy, so that services are not interrupted and they're always going to be provided to the community. It's also looking at, okay, what is the average affordability of the residents? Are they able to be able to provide, to pay for all these services that they deserve to enjoy? So it's looking at that, looking at the prioritization of what the utility or the agency is needing in order to keep those revenues going, to keep the entity operational in order to provide those services to the community. So taking a look at that prioritization, what is the financial, where could they cut? Where is it need to be? What kinds of grants could they get? What other opportunities or avenues of income or funding can come into play into that different utility to be able to provide for our community? So it's balancing that and looking at the affordability, what other avenues. I believe we did that even with GPA, where we had one of the grants, it was from EPA. It was one of the grants that they were coming from, we were doing for the utilities. So it's those types of things. The water leakages, how much are we losing there? What can we do to keep from losing any more water, so that water could go into the home and not out onto the road, spill out into the road? So looking at the different entities, how they're prioritizing, what's the order of business, and being able to say, well, can the community afford that? How is that going to impact? Senator Uggan has said, can you make sure that you take a look at when the rates are coming up, that we can take a look at it and see where that reduction can take place. And when these rates, the water rates, when we come and visit, we give you the 5-year plan so that we could go out to be able to get the funding that is needed in order to bring that utility up to par. But then we also have the PUC is able to go back into looking at on a yearly basis of these rates. Is it reasonable to cut the rate down? Does it have to stay at its point? Do we have to raise it? Why would we have to raise it? What's your justification of even requesting that at the PUC? So it is a balancing act. It is being able to meet that challenge, and what can the community afford, and what we cannot afford. What can we not afford to lose, and what do we have to maintain, and what is it that we have to do in order to improve those services to the individual?
Okay, thank you. That's really all the questions that I have. I just want to make it clear, of course, that although the law allows for a holdover, that holdover has completely expired now, the 90 days plus 3 legislative days. So the last session that we had this past Thursday was actually the 3rd legislative day. So the legislature doesn't go back into session until probably late March. So between now and that time that the legislature goes back into session, your tenure on the board really is completely expired at this point.
I received that letter from your office,
Okay.
Senator, and I referred it to the council.
Okay, but we will act as expeditiously as we can. And since Senator Barnes has made a disclosure, I will also disclose that Ms. Perez is one of her daughter is my goddaughter, and so and so that disclosure is made.
And she recently got commissioned as a second lieutenant.
Oh, excellent, excellent, great, excellent. All right, so with that, I don't have any further questions, and unless you have any closing remarks.
It's like you said, Rowena, you want to do this another round?
Okay.
For the community, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And so the confirmation hearing for Ms. Rowena Perez is deemed completed, and thank you. At this time, we're going to now move on and receive testimony on bill number 267-32. And I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to the sponsor of the bill, Senator San Nicolas, to briefly explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Bill 267-32 is an act to strengthen the provisions for the repair or demolition of unsafe structures in Guam's building law. Over the years, all of us have seen, especially in our commercial and industrial zoned areas, buildings that have been there for quite some time that do not clearly meet what anyone would expect would be a basic standard in safety. In reviewing the building code laws, it became apparent that there's some tightening up that possibly could be done to further strengthen the mandate of DPW and empower them to be able to go out and try and deal with these unsafe structures. So we put together Bill 267 so that we can try and tighten up those provisions within the building law to further empower DPW to be able to take care of these buildings. And most notable in the bill is the assessment on all limited only to commercial and industrial zone properties, not residential, just commercial and industrial. Those buildings that are identified by the building official, who is the director of DPW, to not meet those safety standards will then be assessed a fine equal to 20% of the assessed value of those buildings. And the intent of putting this fine provision in there for these commercial and industrial zone buildings is that we can finally get some penalty in place that hopefully will get the property owners to take action. The last thing we want to do is to have the government take action. Hopefully this will be the one and only initial step we need to take to finally signal to these property owners that it's time to get these buildings dealt with. We've had some very good feedback from GURA, the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority, on their ideas and concerns, as well as the Guam Visitors Bureau, as well as DPW. So I look forward, Mr. Chairman, to the testimony that we're going to be receiving with respect to this bill, and working with the committees that we can make sure the final product is something to everybody's satisfaction. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Nicolas. So with that, Mr. Dominguez.
I'm Carl Dominguez, the Director of the Department of Public Works. Hafaday and good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you, Senator San Nicolas, for introducing this bill. I've wanted to have that unsafe structures law, section of law, beefed up the past 2.5 years. And so this is a really good step towards that. And I like the bill. I would only just ask if you would consider 4 items. There's a letter that addressed to you, Mr. Chairman, and if I could just go down the 4 items, and that's all I'm asking for. First is section 66503, page 3. On page 3, 66503 starts at the bottom of page 2 and then goes on to page 3. 66501, excuse me. And you'll see on my letter here, I'm asking if this sentence or similar verbiage could be added to this section. A vacant structure not secured against entry shall be deemed unsafe. I actually got these words verbatim, Mr. Chairman, out of the 2009 International Building Code. There is a section in the code that covers unsafe structures. It's very limited verbiage in the code. The unsafe structures law goes in a lot more detail on the processes to use in order to get rid of unsafe structures. So I think this is important because a vacant building that is unsecured could lead to, for example, children getting injured or worse if they gain access to an unsecured vacant structure, and if they're without adult supervision. An arsonist could go into the building and attempt to burn it down or burn it down, endangering adjoining properties. Squatters might be able to occupy the building and then turn it into a real health hazard. And so I'd like to ask if this verbiage could be included in the bill. The next one would be section 66503A1, which is on page 3, and 66503 the B1 on page 5. And I'm simply asking the latitude for DPW to be able to send out notices by certified mail and not just by personal delivery and registered mail. Again, this verbiage of certified mail is in the 2009 International Building Code under unsafe structures. Then next is section 66503A2 on page 5. Let me flip to that page. Yes, it's the top line on page 5, line number 1. I'm asking that the word or a dangerous building be changed to just the word unsafe. And the reason for this, Mr. Chairman, is there's no word dangerous in the rest of the unsafe structures law. It doesn't even appear once in the 2009 International Building Code, under unsafe structures. So just to keep it consistent, I'm recommending that we change the verbiage to unsafe on this line here. Okay. And finally, this would be 66505A on page 8. It is line 12, where any person entering this building without permission of the Director of Public Works shall be subject to a fine of up to $1,000 per violation. So that we put a monetary disincentive to violators because it didn't have it. It had the words shall be subject to fine, and that was it. It stopped at that, but it didn't define what a fine is. And other than that, that's all the testimony I have. I think with the passage of the bill, and if it becomes law, I'll have a lot more authority to enforce the law, and it'd be a huge incentive for the violator to comply with the law. So, thank you very much.
All right, Senator Santos.
You okay?
Senator Uggan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Dominguez, for your testimony this afternoon. I guess, just for purposes of having a better understanding on this particular restriction, we're talking primarily about business facilities?
It's really limited to industrial and commercial, but
Okay.
it says the word building, right? Unsafe or unsafe structures. But early in the, if I may, on page 3, line 5, starting with line 5. For the purpose of this chapter, unsafe buildings are all buildings and structures or equipment thereof which are structurally unsafe. And then it goes on. So, and another type of unsafe, for example, could be some silo, some old silo that's crumbling. It could fall down and injure the adjoining property or persons on that property. It could be, for example, a very old steel communication tower. I would think those kinds of things would be erected on either a commercial property or an industrial property.
So right now, the provision, this particular provision does not deal directly with residential homes.
No.
Okay.
No.
I guess the other question I have then is, I know you have provisions in here that deal with signage, enclosures of these structures, but is there a particular timeline that you allow these property owners, let's say for example, within 30 days you must demolish this structure, or within 30 days you must enclose this structure so that it would no longer allow for access to the facility, and then within another time frame you would have to demolish it?
Yes, if you read the entire law, it's pretty specific, the procedure to go through, and in fact, I'm of the position that our personnel, when we start processing these violations, they really have to follow the letter of the law. And the reason is, if we don't follow the letter of the law, if we even mess up a little bit, I would predict that the property owner's counsel could use that against us and say, you didn't follow procedure, so, that type of thing. So I'm very sensitive to the procedure spelled out in this law.
I guess the reason why I pose that inquiry is because, first and foremost, you want to restrict any individual from accessing that structure immediately. Within a certain timeline, let's say within 10 days, you must enclose the structure and provide the appropriate notification that this facility has been condemned by Public Works.
Yeah, I think there's verbiage in here where if there's a particular extra dangerous situation, I have the ability to step in and do something, including if I had to use our own personnel and resources to do it. If, for example, you have an absentee owner, or just a non-responsive owner.
I'm just thinking in terms of some of the business owners. Let's say, for example, obviously you will not have a building structurally unsafe if, in fact, the owner is either has not used it in quite some time, or does not necessarily have the immediate resources to be able to demolish it.
Yes.
So I'm trying to see if in fact the law provides for an eventual demolition of that unsafe structure. So that's why I was talking about the immediate enclosure, notification to the public, and then within a certain timeline, let's say 90 days or within 180 days, you must demolish this particular facility, and provide the owner time to go out and acquire the resources.
Here's the thing about this law is, it's on the building official to make the call. So, if the owner comes to the building official, me, and says, yes, I'd like to repair this building, and I would say to that person, you would repair this building at your risk, because even I would strongly suggest you hire a structural engineer to determine whether the building is structurally sound to repair it, because you would be repairing it at your risk, because I would still reserve the ability to declare it unsafe and that it had to be demolished.
Right.
Okay. So, property owner would be at their risk.
I guess, and I'll just close with this thought, is just trying to figure out and allow the building owner ample time to be able to acquire the additional resources, because I would not think that the building owner is going to abandon that structure for, let's say, 5 years, 6 years, and then it's deemed unsafe structurally. Because if it's deemed unsafe structurally, then eventually it should be demolished.
Well,
No
you
question.
you make a good point, because the way I read the law is I only give them 30 days. That's it. No latitude. And there might be a situation where, truthfully, the property owners genuinely attempt to, for example, to repair the building, and it might be perfectly repairable. Just needs the time to do it. And sometimes to repair a building, you might not have all the materials readily available on island. They have to be ordered for some reason, and so that you make a good point. But the law, the way I read the law, and unless I can be advised by you, is that there's no latitude. They have 30 days to repair or demolish the building once I give them notice.
Or even providing the building. What was your title?
Building official.
The building official. So even providing that building official one-time flexibility in terms of providing that extension. not to exceed an additional whatever the case may be, so that at least it's recognized that within 30 days, guess what, you must demolish this. And then if the building owner comes up with a plea, a justifiable plea that says, I'm trying to acquire all the necessary resources to either refurbish it or demolish it, then as a building official, you would have that one-time discretion, so that the building owner may have an additional 60 days or whatever.
Or Senator Nicolas, perhaps a scenario could be the building looks like it needs to be demolished. It appears to be unsafe after inspection, and then the property owner comes to me and says, would you give me some time to engage a structural engineer, and if he determines it's repairable, yes, as long as he stamps it and puts a signature to it, licensed structural engineer, okay, but in the meantime, you have 5 days to secure this building from entry, and then I'll give you 21 days to come up with a letter from a structural engineer, and then at that point I'll declare it unsafe, and then you'll have 30 days, or if you can give me a reason that you need more than 30 days, then I'll make the declaration at some point in time. But I'm not a lawyer, and the way I read the law is it appears to be inflexible, but if I could get some advice on it, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Senator Yamashita.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Director Dominguez, you and I have engaged in a conversation. In Tamuning alone, we have several structures that have been, for years, have graced the skies. And thank you, by the way, for taking down the 3 cranes in that particular place. Because
You're welcome. Yeah.
Honestly, the residents in that area were very concerned because they would wave with the wind, and we can see the rust. Even with bad eyes that I have, I could see the rust, and it was a dangerous situation.
Yes.
But throughout Tamuning, there are many commercial buildings that have been standing and are dangerous and should have been demolished. And so while I appreciate the notion of flexibility and support for these owners, I know I'm going to have to study this a lot more to make sure I know what I'm saying, but I would hope that the standards are in place, and I really appreciate the sponsors moving this. Unfortunately, I think it's true. I think that money does motivate people, and if the 20% penalty is what's going to get them to pay attention to their property, I think it's way overdue. I think it's way overdue, because I can see these structures right now. People can access them. The old lights. I think you and I used to go there decades ago. That is, you pass that place, and it really looks very. It's the next typhoon, all of that stuff will be flying all over. The debris will be flying all over. And so I appreciate this effort tremendously. And I know that it's only for commercial and light industry, but I will say to you, Mr. Director, that we have houses that are unsafe, that are eyesores, that are dangerous. And on the street where my mom lives, we live with my mom, there's a house that is absolutely overgrown, and it's dangerous. And when a neighbor moved in, they put a lot of private resources into seeing how they can get it cleared, because they have little children. And so in this jungled house, we can only imagine, we have a lot of snakes in Tamuning, so we can only imagine the snakes and the type of animals that were hiding in the brush, right? So, someone might say to me that's a different issue, but I'm not so sure that it is. I know that I know there's a difference between residential and industrial and commercial, but when we're talking about safety and the appearance of buildings and property ownership and property responsibility, I think there's a spectrum. And so again, I'll be studying this more, particularly as it hits session floor. But I do appreciate you being here, and I do appreciate the effort you put into remediating unsafe structures, because they are dangerous. And it's not just the little ones who can get in there, but it's also, we have a lot of homeless people. They can go in and seek shelter, and they can get hurt as well. But then again, it's also the animals that breed and there. So I really do appreciate Senator Nicolas and Senator Ada doing this, because I think it's way
me
past
too.
time. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Ada?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Dominguez, do you think the Guam Building Code Council is the appropriate council to sit as an appeals
Yes, I do.
board?
It was the Guam Contractors License Board, and I believe that the Guam Building Code Council is the more appropriate body to hear appeals, because in the 2009 International Building Code, there is a section on, in fact, it's section 116, unsafe structures and equipment. And the Contractors License Board, primarily, they engage in, making sure that contractors are licensed and they're knowledgeable of the law and that sort of thing. But this is a structural issue. This is a structural and safety issue. Not that the Contractors License Board is not interested in safety, but that's what the building code is for. The building code is for the safety and welfare of the public. That structures out there are in fact safe.
So currently, who can appeal, or where do they appeal now? Should you deem a building unsafe at this point?
By law, by the current law, it's the Contractors License Board.
So we're going to take that away from the Contracting Licensing Board and give it to the
And the Guam
council?
Building Code Council, yes.
I see.
And I believe they are the appropriate body to hear appeals.
So who
Yes.
currently sits on the council, the Guam Building Code Council?
Well, I do,
Mhm.
as an ex officio, but the law says that I can't participate, or any of my, or anybody I designate as a building official can't participate. But we have an architect, civil engineer, mechanical engineer, structural engineer.
Realtor.
The fire department's there. The fire department is represented, and I believe that's who we have for now.
Yeah, I think there's a representative from the Realtors Association also.
I don't think so, Mr.
No?
Chairman, not yet, no.
Yeah, so you do feel that then that is the appropriate
Yes.
place that the appeals will be heard.
Yeah, and I don't know who sits on the board of I don't attend a representative from DPW attends the Contractors License Board because we are ex officio of that as well. But like I said, when you look at the Guam Building Code Council, they're technical people, by and large. They're technical people.
All right. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Senator Barnes? Okay. I just have one question, and that is, right now, of course, does the law, I guess if the way the bill is being written is that if a building is deemed to be unsafe, then you've got to vacate, and you've got to either go in, the owner's got to go in and either repair, demolish,
Or demolish.
repair or demolish.
Repair or demolish.
And then of course you want it to add language that basically requires that a vacant structure, that there's a requirement to secure the building.
Yes.
Does
From entry.
Yeah, does the current law right now require that?
No.
Okay. So there's going to be a lot of enforcement that's going to need to be made then after this thing is passed with that language putting in the requirement to secure, such as, for example, that abandoned parking structure across from San Vittori's Church.
Yes.
It's a 3-story structure, which I understand is basically serving as a housing for homeless.
Yes. So we would track down the fee simple owner and require them to fence the area so that to prevent entry.
That's right. In the same manner that where areas where new construction is going on, it has to be fenced
Yes.
off to keep out folks
That's right.
from going into an unsafe area.
That's
So,
right. Yes.
I believe the old Hong Kong building on Route 1 there, right by American Title, I don't think it's secured right now. But it's not. And so that's going to be at the very minimum then requiring the owners of these buildings to secure them.
To secure them. Yes. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to basically so that unauthorized entry
Won't happen.
won't happen. Yeah.
That's right. Yes.
Okay. I don't have any other questions. Do you have any closing remarks, Senator? Did you have any? Okay, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I do appreciate the questions from Senator Uggan and your contributions also, Mr. Dominguez. On the subject of the assessment of the fines, the issue was brought up um, about what if the owner wanted to do something to fix it, right? And I put some thought into that, and what I was wondering was, how would you feel if we allowed for everything to kind of stay in place where you would deem it unsafe, the fines would begin accruing, but the building council can waive those fines within 365 days if the building has been properly addressed to the expectations of the building council within that time period. I'm trying to get a timeline in here because I can see how a building owner might come out, if we pass this, might come out and say, hey, I don't want to lose the property. I'll come and I'll fix it, but it's going to take me 6 months, And so I don't want to halt the accruing of the fines because that's what's
The incentive,
That's
yeah.
the
That's the
disincentive.
incentive,
Yeah.
sure.
But what if we provided a provision here where the building code council can waive all accrued fines with 365 days? Do you think would be enough time for a demolition or a repair to be properly addressed with a reasonable expectation to a business owner?
Ooh, I think from most of the buildings I've seen, with the possibility of the Emerald Ocean View Towers in Oka, is that I think 365 days would be too generous.
Too generous.
I believe it'd be too generous. That's just what my gut tells me this afternoon is maybe no more than 180 days,
180
say. 180 calendar days, yes.
I'm just trying to find a solution here where we can address if there is a building owner out there that does want to say, okay, I want to repair it.
Yeah.
How do we make the fines go away that were accrued without actually halting the ability of the building official to initiate the accruing of those fines? So I think that this may be an opportunity for us to plug some of that language in.
Yeah, well, maybe we can give them some flexibility, but not too much.
Okay. So 180
not too
days.
much. I mean, fair and reasonable, but not generous. Certainly not generous. And,
That's all I had for Mr. Dominguez.
Thank you. Yes.
When a building is ordered vacated, what would be the process for them to? Because if you ordered me to vacate the building, that means I can't go back in, right, to make the necessary repairs. What would be the process to actually go back in to make the proper repairs to the building?
oh no, vacating in this case, Senator, means that the people who are occupying the building in an unsafe building need to vacate right away. And so if we're talking about people who are going back in to do the repairs or the demolition, that's perfectly allowable. It's the purpose of going back. It's not occupying the building in the sense of living there or working there under normal circumstances. We're talking about work to repair or work to demolish, one or the other.
And that's today's interpretation of it, right? Or your interpretation of it.
That's my interpretation of it.
So
yes.
that's why I'm saying. I mean, is there going to be process where it would be spelled out as to who will come up with that process to actually go back in to do the work?
I think the verbiage in the law is adequate, more than adequate for that.
Okay.
Yes, more than adequate for that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Okay, if there's no other questions, Mr. Mayor, did you?
If I may, just take a few minutes. I'm Mayor Gogui, Mayor of Ward of Chalampago. I appreciate the Mr. Chair and good senators here today, an opportunity just to talk a few minutes about 267-32. This abandoned structure has been near and dear to the hearts of many mayors, including myself, and it's an issue that I appreciate, Senator Yamashita, you had mentioned, is worth studying because it's a real complex issue. Because when we talk about abandoned structures, as mentioned here, it's not just commercial and industrial structures that we're faced with, it's also residential. And somehow those structures need to be tied in to this unsafe structure law. And ultimately, I think the bill doesn't eliminate it, but when it comes to 20% fine, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things that I wanted to point out is in 5 GCA Chapter 40, subsection 40122, subparagraph O,
it states that one of the things that, and it refers to unsafe structure, it goes mayor's responsibilities to issue citations to owners of property for failure to remove property deemed unsafe by building officials, which are the officials out of DPW, pursuant to subsection 6501 through 6507 of Title 21 Guam Code Annotated. In the event that an owner does not remove the unsafe structure, the mayor or vice mayor may have the structure cleared and submit the bill to the owner for payment. In the event that the mayor or vice mayor takes action to clear unsafe structures, a 10% surcharge shall be added to the bill, and the surcharge shall be deposited into the municipal fund, and that's our municipal revolving fund. Should the owner refuse to pay, the mayor or vice mayor shall forward the claim to the Attorney General, requesting that steps be taken to record a lien against the property and the amount of the unpaid bill. Obviously, there's some duplication because in this section of law that is applicable to mayors, it doesn't delineate the difference between residential, commercial, or industrial. So I think that really needs to either be repealed, if this is the direction we're going to go, and we're going to leave this responsibility under the sole auspices of DPW, so that we don't allow people in violation of our safe structures to use the law in their favor and let these things drag out. That's one of the points I made. But the other thing that I wanted to make, but the other thing is, in reference to this particular section of the law, if we were to do something as mayors and vice mayors, we need to refer this to the Attorney General. I think the Attorney General's office, as well as the Director of Revenue and Taxes, is a key component to this unsafe structure issue. One, because when you start saying that if you don't do, then we're going to do, there's got to be some sort of language that I believe the Attorney General's office blesses, that DPW can issue, and if they refuse to sign, can actually have or still be deemed legal, that allows them ultimately to go in and demolish these structures at the expense of the landowner, the property owner, or the owner of the structure. That's one. And then the other thing is that we really need to link Department of Revenue and Taxation into this whole process. And the reason why I state that is if you do an assessment, or if you task somebody to do an assessment of these abandoned structures, whether it's residential, commercial, and possibly industrial, I would bet dollars to donuts that a lot of these structures are no longer on the tax rolls. And the reason why I state that is because, when I first took office in 2009, within a couple of months, a residential owner came into my office and asked that her building, a home that was owned by her parents, that her and her brothers and sisters really didn't have the monies to repair. She wanted it to be removed from the tax rolls because since Typhoon Paka in 1998, when the building was damaged, they have not had the resources, or really not necessarily the resources, but they couldn't come together as brothers and sisters to figure out what to do with the building. So the building remained dilapidated. So in my efforts to try to do the right thing, and I studied the law, because this unsafe structure issue is a very complex thing. I said, okay, this is what DPW needs to do. This is what the mayors can do. So what I did is I said, come in a week from now, and I'll have something for you. So what I did is I said, okay, this is what the law states. So within this certain amount of time, since you're asking it to be removed because it's an unsafe structure, you have to either repair it and or demolish it. And I said, here is a document that I'm going to register with land management that if you fail to do this, then you are authorizing the government of Guam to comply with the second half of this law. And that means come in and remove the structure for you. And that if we will bill you and we will add a 10% surcharge or 10% fee above the cost of the demolishing of this structure or this house of yours, and we will ask you to pay it. If you refuse to pay it, just like the law says, then we will put a lien against your property. Obviously, she refused to sign the agreement, and she's still, her family is still paying taxes on the building. But as it was pointed out, without any real teeth into holding these people financially accountable for keeping these unsafe structures up, they're just going to let them go and do nothing about it because they have no liability against it. It's off the tax rolls. Nobody's fining them because they've done nothing with the building, and therefore it remains. There are buildings in my village. In fact, one of them is a commercial building that has been there for more than 30 years, and it's on a main route. And so we just, there's got to be something done, and this is a good start. I think there's some tweaking that needs to be done, and I think that we can't forget that in addition to the industrial and commercial properties, that residential buildings, homes on residential lots or agricultural lots that were once, that have homes or what was once homes still exist, and those need to be addressed as well. And as the mayor of my district, I'm sure the mayors, my colleagues will say to you that's equally important and needs to be addressed equally so. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Closing comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To close, I agree with a lot of the sentiments that were shared, and I think that moving forward with this bill, because of the complexity and all the different facets of unsafe structures and how it affects different groups, whether it's a business owner who owns a commercial building or a family that owns a residential home. One of the reasons why we targeted only the fine, to commercial and industrial is because we want to make sure that we're putting that kind of monetary disincentive into the law. But all of the other provisions that we've changed in here do in fact apply to the residential properties. One of the reasons why the tightening of the law was important was the original language stated that unsafe structures must be repaired, vacated, or demolished. And it kind of gave the impression where, okay, if they just move out, then it can just sit there.
Absolutely.
By retweaking the language the way we have in this bill, they are required to vacate it and repair or demolish.
Absolutely.
And so this is going to be across the board with all structures. That kind of provision there is going to put some new requirements onto everybody who is a property owner. The residential owners are not going to be fined in this bill, and from my perspective, I don't want to be, if somebody is of limited means living in a structure, it gets challenging for me to be able to say we're going to charge them a fine. However, we don't want anyone living in an unsafe place either. But now we're entering into a whole new gamut of, housing for families. And I would like to address residential properties within that bigger picture of, if we are going to be truly putting these kind of penalties onto the residential side, how are we going to be providing homes for families? I think that we need to be looking at that from a bigger picture. So in this limited picture, this limited scope that just strictly limits it to commercial and industrial properties, I think we can move this forward at this time, and then work together on the residential side. And I'm very grateful for all the testimony that's going to help us tighten this up. And I'm also very grateful to the chairman, Senator Ada, who co-sponsored the bill. His office did definitely participate in the formulation of this legislation, and I'm very grateful to have his eagle eye on these things, because I know that when Senator Ada puts his signature to some proposed legislation, it has to have all of its I's dotted and T's crossed, and I'm very grateful for his co-sponsorship, and I look forward to moving this bill out soon so that we can get that part of the law tweaked on the vacating, repair, and demolishing, and also getting the monetary disincentive in place. So that the building official can finally go to these property owners and say, hey, look, it's not just a matter of the property sitting there, it's now accruing a penalty. I do appreciate, Carl, and from Senator Uggan, the suggestion on providing a means for the building owners to be able to address it on with their own means within a limited, reasonable time frame. Not generous, but reasonable. So I will work with the committee to make sure that we address that language, and I look forward to any additional testimony that may come forward from the mayors if they think that there's some things to add. I know Mayor Goku will send a very thorough email after reading through the bill.
I've read the bill. I've read the bill a couple of times.
Okay.
And it brings up a point, but exactly that. I know that the residential, if you don't mind my Mr. Chair, if you don't mind my interrupting, or at least my interjection here, is that one of the things that I really think we really need to firm up, and at least in this section of law, is we need to stop the practice of removing unsafe structures from the tax rolls. And that if we are going to endorse, and typically what happens, the way these tax structures or these structures are removed from the tax rolls, they go to the mayor, and the mayor writes a letter and says, yes, nobody's occupying the building, it's considered unusable, or we've determined it to be unusable, and so we concur that there is no use for the building, therefore, why should these people, why should these property owners pay taxes on a structure that they're not using? But my take is this, is that if you're going to, whether it comes from us, a mayor, or it comes from Public Works, and I really think we should just kind of let it rest with them, because they're the building officials, is that if they're going to prepare a letter, that's an opportune time, whether it's industrial, commercial, and or residential, to work with the landowner who's paying taxes on these structures to enter into an agreement with the government of Guam in accordance with the law. And we're not doing that. But it's the opportune time for the government of Guam, regardless of what agency, to enter in, and that's why I think it's important that we engage the Attorney General's office. Is that okay? They want to comply with the law. They're going to demolish it, and while they're in demolishing it, they want to remove it from their tax rolls. I don't have a problem with it, but it's an opportune time to engage the landowner and say, if you fail to demolish it, as you say you're going to do, then you are going to enter into this agreement. You are also going to enter this agreement, and we'll allow you to remove it from your tax rolls to demolish because you're going to demolish the building, and we're going to allow you to stop paying a building tax on your property tax for this particular structure. That when we do this, you're entering into an agreement, so we don't have to keep going back and saying, we're going to enter your property and demolish it and charge you a bill and assess 10%, what have you, because it's been done up front. But this practice of just eliminating these unsafe structures from a person's property tax, and I'm sure I'm going to get some calls, but eliminating these unsafe structures from people's property taxes, which without asking them to take responsibility in removing it or repairing it, I think is fundamentally wrong. And that's one of the things that I've constantly advocated that's absent from this whole unsafe structure process.
In residential, what he's saying to me is that if you are continuing to be billed property tax on a structure that you are not occupying, you can't occupy, it is a form of penalty.
But we allow them to remove it.
It is a form of penalty. You don't.
I don't.
You don't.
But there have been occasions, in our case, there have been occasions in their buildings standing in my village to this day that are no longer being assessed a building tax on that structure, and it's still standing, and it remains an eyesore. And I'm sure that there are some commercial buildings that are standing to this day that have been removed from the property tax for that particular building, the building assessment for that on their property tax, because it was deemed unusable, and so the owner said, well, we want to take it off our property tax, because we're not using it, and so why should we be paying tax on a building? And I've always I discovered on many occasions, because there was more than just one resident, and I ensured that they weren't happy when they left my office. I said, here's the law. This is the law. And so all I'm doing is trying to enforce the law. And this is an opportune time for me to enter into an agreement with you, that you are going to genuinely address this building, whether you're going to repair it or remove it, and that here's the time frame that the law allows for you. As a matter of fact, believe it or not, it said 30 days. And I was generous enough, and I says, I'm going to give you a year. But understand that when you sign this, and I sign it, that I'm going to have this recorded with land management, which may be another entity that needs to be involved in trying to figure out, the best process to address the communications between the agencies, whether it be the mayor's office or Public Works or Revenue Tax or the Attorney General's office. Land management might be another component that we might need to consider and have involved in this process of making it sound and workable and cohesive. And that's, I think, where we've been lacking in addressing this unsafe structure. It's the cohesiveness and the laws that exist and that are directly tied to unsafe structures. There's the cohesion is weak at best. And so you have a good lawyer, you can go in and argue and say, well, we complied with the law, we vacated. And so I don't have any real objections or concerns about the way the law was modified, but it still, I think, needs to be further reinforced with a greater cohesion in the process.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And if there are no further testimonies or questions, the Committee on Public Safety, Infrastructure, and Maritime Transportation certifies that this public hearing is complete, and we are now adjourned. It is 3:20 p.m. At this time.